There are promises of curbing green energy subsidies, of eliminating the provincial portion of the HST from electricity bills, of cancelling the planned refurbishment of nuclear plants. Energy is factoring prominently in all of the four major party platforms, and tonight we've gathered representatives from all four to debate energy policy. So we welcome, in our nation's capital, Bob Chiarelli. He's Minister of Energy and the Liberal candidate in this election for Ottawa West Nepean. Lisa MacLeod, Progressive Conservative candidate for Nepean Carleton and her party's energy critic. And with us here in studio, Peter Tabuns, NDP candidate for Toronto Danforth and his party's energy critic. And Ken Burns, who's the Green Party candidate in the riding of Brant. We welcome all of you to the program tonight. Nice to have you here. We also want to let our viewers know that you can be part of the conversation. We have producers Hillary Clark and Elamine Abdul-Mahmoud standing by right now. They're hosting a live chat on our website. That's theagenda.tvo.org. Or you can chime in using Twitter, #AgendaTVO. Okay. Minister Chiarelli, I'm going to ask you actually to sit tight for a second because I think I want to give your critics a shot at this first, and then we'll get you to comment on the observations that they make. And to that end, let me start with Lisa MacLeod. You had a press conference this morning in Ottawa in which you and your party leader, Tim Hudak, reiterated your call for a judicial inquiry into the Mississauga gas plant cancellation. My question to you is, what value would that provide? What would we learn we don't already know?
Well, I think we still don't know an awful lot because many of the key witnesses are refusing to come forward, either to the Justice Committee when it was sitting and to the OPP. I think it's important that the taxpayers fully understand not only what happened to the $1.1 billion, but also the cover-up that ensued. That's important information, and it's important work that still needs to be done. We believe in the Progressive Conservative Party, and my leader stated it today. We need a Gomery-style inquiry so we can get recommendations and we can ensure that this never happens again. Let's put this into perspective. The Liberals spent $1.1 billion largely by the decisions that they made when they canceled that gas plant. Those are the auditor's words, not mine. And they did that to save a Liberal seat in the last election. That's more than Barack Obama spent to become president of the United States. That's Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne's legacy, and we think that the Ontario people and the public deserve better. They deserve answers, and the only leader committed to getting those answers today through a judicial inquiry is Tim Hudak. Okay, let's go on to Peter Tabuns. Do we need a judicial inquiry into this?
Well, in fact, Andrea Horwath has said that we should have an inquiry into this. There are still quite a few gaps about the decision-making that resulted in $1 billion worth of public money being thrown away. And frankly, Steve, if you want to discourage a government from engaging in this kind of activity in the future, if it's simply a wave bye-bye, then that isn't much discouragement. They actually have to come forward. We have to know who made those political calculations. When I questioned Don Guy, when I questioned Dalton McGuinty, we got very vague answers about what happened in the Premier's office, in the campaign team on those cancellations. I think those answers need to be provided to the people of Ontario.
Ken Burns.
Well, there's no question that politics is broken and people aren't trusting in politicians because there is no good policy at Queen's Park. It's all about partisan interest. And I think that we have to put the focus back on returning good policy and long-term thinking to Queen's Park. That's where we need to put our energy in doing this. I think that making sure that it doesn't ever happen again, that the systems are in place, is a key element of it. But that should be really the focus of what's going forward, more than trying to find out who did what or who said what. We need to find out how we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again and put good policy and the people of Ontario first at Queen's Park.
Bob Chiarelli, you've heard the criticisms. Let's get your response to them.
Thank you. We've had to build a broken system in the electricity system over the last number of years. And that included building 22 new gas plants. 20 of those gas plants were properly sited, properly built, without any issues, and they've all been commissioned. 2 of them were improperly sited. That's been acknowledged, and Premier Wynne has actually apologized for that and instructed me to change the rules on siting of gas plants. That having been said, all 3 parties agreed to the Justice Committee having an inquiry into this particular issue. There have been almost 500,000 documents provided. There's been about 100 witnesses who have attended the particular proceedings. That was a particularly expensive process. It's taken 1.5 years to date. They've already started the first steps towards writing a report on the inquiry at the committee. So having a judicial inquiry at this time, first of all, they would have to stop everything that they've done. They'd have to fold that all up because you can't have them both going on at the same time. In addition, there was Tim Hudak, I believe, or Andrea Horwath, one or the other, when the question of a judicial inquiry came up, indicated that it would be too expensive and the committee was the right way to go. It's been extremely thorough. There have been many witnesses. Millions of documents, almost 500,000 documents have been provided.
Okay, let me chime in at this point if I can.
And it's still ongoing.
Let me chime in if I can at this point, because we literally could take all our time on this one story, and I don't want to do that because there are other energy issues to talk about. But let me do one more go-round here, which is, do you think that the Liberal malfeasance on the gas plant cancellations rises to the level that it is so egregious as to overwhelm all of the other, what you would see as accomplishments that the Liberals have on the energy file over the last decade? And that's for you, Bob Chiarelli.
Okay. I've been knocking on a lot of doors in this election campaign, and I can tell you that the issues that keep coming up at the doorstep, and this is after about 40, 45 polls, and that's a pretty broad selection, is healthcare, it's issues for seniors, it's parents who are concerned about their children and class sizes. It's about parents and students who are concerned about having their 30% discount on tuition removed. Yes, the question of energy prices come up, but it certainly doesn't appear to be the priority issue in this election campaign. And my assessment comes from what I'm hearing on the doorsteps. And they're not happy with what's happening on the job side and the economy side in terms of Hudak. It has no credibility. And their assessment of the NDP is that they have no plan whatsoever.
Okay, let's hold off on this because I want to keep it really on the energy issues and not everything else here today. Lisa MacLeod, the follow-up for you is, we know it's cost $1 billion to cancel this gas plant, but your party promised to cancel it as well. So would we be spending the money whether you were in power last time or not, right?
Well, let's be very clear. Our party did not say that we would have ever built it there. That's the key difference between us and the Liberals. Secondly, the Auditor General confirmed, and I am a member of the Justice Committee, that many of the decisions that escalated the price were a decision political, and the Kathleen Wynne has admitted their political decisions to move from Oakville to Napanee. Those transmission lines, distribution issues, all have escalated the cost almost 3 times what it probably would have been. So the Liberals own that, whether they want to or not. I have a couple of comments, though, with what Minister Chiarelli has said. You know, he's likened this $1.1 billion gas plant scandal to just a cup of coffee. I think that's insulting, and I think when you go door to door, you hear from the public who have seen their hydro rates escalate. They don't believe it's just a cup of coffee, and they're very angry with it. They want to see Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty take the stand. And in terms of the committee, the Justice Committee is dissolved. Minister Chiarelli is saying that it's continuing its work. It's not. It's dissolved as of Parliament's dissolution. In addition to that, it didn't start to write a report. We were still going through witnesses, many of whom refused to testify or who knew an election was coming and chose to testify at a date they knew was never going to come about. So again, we need a judicial inquiry. People are making a direct correlation between the incompetence and the malfeasance of this government and their own hydro bill, and they think it's time for a change. And unfortunately for Mr. Chiarelli, on not owning up to that is going to actually, I think, impact him and his party throughout this process. Because
okay, stand by. Let me get to.
People want somebody to be held accountable.
Let me do Peter Tabuns on this as well. Again, there are some things that the Liberals have done in the past 10 years that you, I imagine, could sign on to. Closing all the coal-fired generating stations, for example. Mm-hmm. Do you think the gas plant rises to such a level of malfeasance that it overwhelms all of their other accomplishments?
Well, I have to say their other accomplishments have been to replace coal with gas at an incredible cost instead of investing in efficiency and conservation. They've continued the privatization of the energy system that the Conservatives have started. They've stuck us with a system that's very expensive, still puts out a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, and frankly, this is all of a piece. They are privatizers who, in this instance, decided for political expediency to blow $1 billion to save a number of seats. I think that it's all a unified picture. That waste around the gas plants is consistent with their commitment to privatization. And frankly, they've committed $1 billion to the refurbishment, $1 billion in contracts to the refurbishment of the Darlington nuclear power plant without, in fact, having a final cost, without, in fact, knowing that they can afford to proceed with the whole project. I think it's irresponsible from top to bottom.
Okay, I actually want to go to Darlington next, but I feel I should give Mr. Shirelli a chance to respond to Lisa McLeod's comment about the cup of coffee. I'm not sure that puts in context what you meant when you said that, so if you want to clarify, you can.
The Conservatives asked the chair of the Ontario Power Authority to go before the committee, which he did do. He had spreadsheets with him. They were talking about the Oakville power plant, and the question to him was, what would the cost be on the individual customer's bill for the Oakville plant? And the chair of the OPA said that the cost would be roughly $1 to $2 per year per customer. The cost is spread over 20 years, and it's part of an annual $18 to $20 billion cost of the entire system over 20 years times 20 years. So he was talking about the significant cost of the gas plant issue, which was $955 million, in the context of almost $1 trillion. And he indicated in that context what will be on the individual customer's bill for this Oakville plant over the next 20 years would be roughly between $1 and $2 per year.
So thus the cup of coffee.
And there are other experts who verified that as well.
Okay, understood.
Well, no,
Let's move on.
Several different interpretations of what that cost would be, but Mr. Shirelli, after those numbers were produced, reluctantly decided to dismiss it. I'm sure it was reluctant because who would want to embroil themselves any further in this? But he disregarded, I think, the public's anger on this by suggesting it was just a cup of coffee. If people wanted to roll up the rim on their government and try and find a winner, it was certainly not with this gas plant scandal, and I think it was offensive.
Okay, we've had a good kick of this, and let's move on right now, because again, we could spend the whole program on the gas plants, but there are other issues to talk about, such as the nuclear rebuild in the province, which your two parties disapprove of, and I want to get onto that right now. Ken Burns, we depend on nuclear power to keep the lights on in this province. It's 50% of our energy supply right now, and you don't want to refurbish the nuclear power infrastructure. How come?
Because we think that the infrastructure can be phased out. We can phase out our dependence on nuclear and put more emphasis on low-cost generation technologies like low-cost combined heat and power and district energy, and also invest in the energy sources of the 21st century: wind power, solar power, biogas and biomass. There's a lot of work to be done to bring those technologies along and to build our industry. We can, by canceling the Darlington refurbishment, we'll save $1 billion a year. We can import low-cost water power from Quebec, clean, reliable energy from our neighbors in Quebec, and take that $1 billion and invest it in people's homes to build things, to do home energy retrofits, and to help people save money by saving energy.
Peter Tabuns, I'm going out on a limb here. I think if memory serves, what do we do? 20,000, 25,000 megawatts of power every day in this province. That's how much we use? Something like that?
2025 is not bad.
Okay.
It'll go.
So we think we're going to get 12.5 then, 1,000 megawatts
roughly
from nuclear now?
Roughly.
And we're going to replace all of that with renewables? Is that the NDP's view?
No, our position, Steve, is that we should not proceed with refurbishments until we've done a business case. And we haven't seen a business case to date. We think that committing $1 billion in contracts to a project you don't have a business case for doesn't make sense. And you should be aware it's not just Darlington. Bruce Nuclear is looking at refurbishment as well. Altogether, you're talking $25 billion that is on the table. Our history in Ontario, as you know, is that these projects have normally gone double over budget or more. So this is a very risky enterprise. We want to see the numbers. We want to compare options before we make any decision about how to go forward.
Lisa McLeod, why would you still support the refurbishment of the nuclear build that we have in this province when, as Peter Tabuns says, and he's right, it always goes double over budget and long over time?
Well, you have to agree that 50%, over 50% of our baseload is nuclear power. In our climate and in our economy, we're not going to be able to replace that affordably or reliably with wind power, as the other parties would have you believe. You know, we're spending $20 billion on 1% of our power generation from wind and energy. I mean, that's unaffordable and sustainable. We've said very clearly we want to see manufacturing come back to Ontario. We've said very clearly that we want to have cheap and affordable, reliable power. Right now, that is nuclear, and that's why our party has been very clear in trying to maintain a cheap, affordable, reliable, and sustainable source of power. Again, 50% or more on any given day of our baseload is nuclear power. For the other parties to tell you that's not true, or that can be all achieved through conservation or wind turbines, is fairy tales. It's pixie dust. It's unicorns. And again, that's what you're dealing with. You're looking at a party that's willing to tell you the truth, willing to ensure that we have a stable economy, one that has an affordable energy supply, and that's our party. The other parties would have you believe that you can replace nuclear overnight and it won't cost you a dime. I'm sorry, the technology is not there in order to sustain Ontario's energy supply without nuclear power, and we're going to continue to support that as the breadwinner of our supply mix. And right behind me, of course, I'm in Ottawa today. We have a cheap hydroelectric power right across the border in Quebec. We need to start working with other jurisdictions on that front as well to get hydroelectric power into Ontario where it isn't already.
Okay, let me ask Bob Chiarelli about that. Let me ask Bob Chiarelli about that, because I'm hearing from just about every corner that we ought to be buying our power from Quebec now. We ought to be buying hydroelectrically produced electricity from Quebec. It would be far cheaper than anything we're doing now and could certainly obviate the need for some of the nuclear rebuild that we're talking about. We haven't done that yet. You've been the energy minister for a while.
I'll respond very briefly to both issues, the nuclear issue and
Please.
The clean energy, and I'll try to stay within time, Steve.
Thanks.
The NDP have no plan for energy that makes any sense. They don't support refurbishment. They do not support new nuclear. 50% of our capacity. They have no plan on how to deal with that issue. Eliminating nuclear is eliminating 50,000 jobs in Ontario, and they have no idea of the cost, the time frame.
Okay, tell us about your idea, though.
Will come from.
Tell us what you would do.
Sorry?
Tell us what you would do. Never mind what the NDP would do. What would the Liberals do on the nuclear refurbishment issue?
Well, we issued a long-term energy plan in December, which has a refurbishment plan in it to refurbish the Bruce units and the Darlington units over the next for use over the next 25 to 30.
At what cost?
40 years.
At what cost?
Sorry?
At what cost?
The cost is going to be determined as they go through it. One of the issues in the nuclear field is that almost all of the projects that have been done have been over budget and over time. The 13-year refurbishment program that we have is going to be staged in a number of phases. And we're going to be very, very guarded with the first phase. If they cannot stay on time and on budget, we are going to look at alternatives to it. But we have commitments both from Bruce and from OPG, Ontario Power Generation, that they will get it right this time. And we will hold them to that. And if they don't finish the first stage on time and on budget, we will look at other alternatives. But the Conservatives will build new. They're committed to building new nuclear. We have fixed the broken system to a point where we have a surplus at this particular point in time. We don't need new nuclear power, and they would spend $15 billion to create power that we don't need. Their numbers never add up. And
okay, let me get some response from your two critics on those two things. Lisa MacLeod, you just heard the criticism from Bob Chiarelli. I'll get you to speak to that, then Peter Tabuns on his plan.
Well, sure, he's talking about his surplus for that $20 billion for the Green Energy Act that he's spending with it, which is unsustainable, unaffordable, and of course unreliable. We've said we would build new nuclear when we need it. But look, we're looking at a very serious issue in Ontario today. We lost 330,000 manufacturing jobs under the Liberal government. We need to bring those jobs back. In fact, we need to bring more back. We need to be into a position where we're leading the economy in the country again. And if we're going to do that, we're going to need a bigger power supply and a reliable power supply, and we're going to need to rely on nuclear. nuclear. We're going to have to invest in our hydroelectric system, and we're going to have to ensure that we have the natural gas available.
Okay, let me get Peter Tabuns then. Sorry, guys, we're getting tight on time here, and I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak to these things. You heard the criticisms from Minister Shirelli about the NDP lack of a plan on this.
Well, can I say two things? First, when I stood up in the House and criticized the Oakville plant and said it was unnecessary and it was a mistake going forward, I heard exactly the same words from the Liberals then. The NDP doesn't have a plan. We know what we're doing. We're going forward. Demand for power was dropping from 2006 forward. They signed that contract in 2009. They don't have a coherent plan. They have a wish list of things that they want to invest in. But I've questioned energy ministers before, after their long-term plans have been in place, in estimates, and found that these were very rough guesses as to where they wanted to go. In terms of plan, we've said all along, our highest priority is to invest in efficiency and conservation. The OPA did a study last decade showing about a quarter of Ontario's demand could be met through efficiency and conservation at about 3 to 6 cents a kilowatt hour. That's pretty cheap.
So you can get 4, 5, 6,000 megawatts of power just through conservation alone?
You can.
You think it can be done?
Yes.
Okay, let me go to Bob Shirelli again, and because I didn't get the answer on this part. Everybody I'm hearing from these days, Jack Gibbons sent me an email the other day from, what's the name of his group again?
Ontario Clean Air Alliance.
Clean Air Alliance, thank you. Saying, why aren't we going to Quebec to buy our power? They produce it far more cheaply there. It's clean, it's green. What's the answer to that?
The answer to that is, number one, in our long-term energy plan, we do have, as part of our plan, to have discussions with Manitoba and Quebec with respect to accessing their clean energy. It takes time to evolve those issues, and just to be clear, this January, Quebec, for 8 straight days, was purchasing power from Ontario because they didn't have enough supply through the cold weather. So it's a very, very complex technical issue in terms of resolving that. We're looking at clean power from Manitoba and Quebec, particularly as we go into refurbishment. So it would be a sort of a backup moving forward. It's very important for us to have independence of supply in our own province and not to be extremely dependent on other jurisdictions because of those types of issues. It's also important for us to have a reserve or a surplus. The electricity system has 2 backups for almost everything that's there in case we have a flood, as in Toronto, or an ice storm, as we had this year. And so we do need surplus and more capacity than we use on a daily basis.
Point taken. Understood. On to the next topic here. I want to start with the Green Party on this one because there are various incentives. No, incentives is not even the right word. What's the word I'm looking for? The word I have in my head is very pejorative, so I'm not going to use that word. But the Ontario Liberal Party has been offering this clean energy benefit of $1 billion a year to keep electricity prices low. The New Democratic Party is talking about taking the HST off of electricity prices to keep them lower. Both the Liberals and the New Democrats are talking about taking the debt retirement charge off of people's electricity bills, again, in an effort to make electricity prices lower. I think I've heard your leaders say these are stupid ideas that bribe people and don't encourage conservation and encourage people to be energy pigs. So what do we do about trying to incent people to use less power?
That's absolutely right, Steve. We need to help people invest in their homes and businesses to make them more energy efficient and increase conservation so that we can help people save money by saving energy. The hydro handouts that the other parties are talking about are driving consumer behavior in the wrong direction. The 10% benefit is structured so that the biggest consumers receive the biggest subsidy, which is absolutely the wrong way to go. Taking the HST off of hydro is a short-term solution that doesn't actually address the problem today. It doesn't solve the problem for the future. What the Greens are talking about is taking that $1 billion a year that we would save by canceling the Darlington refurbishment and investing that directly into people's homes, helping them to increase their energy efficiency and conservation, saving money by saving energy, and also will create 56,000 jobs along the way. Good local jobs in our community.
Peter Tabuns, I forgot one of the things that was also part of your plan, which was to send people a rebate. You want to send them a check in the mail as well as a reduction to help pay for their energy bills. Now, nobody wants to, and I've heard Andrea Horwath say it, and I'm sure it's true, that there's some places in Ontario where the monthly electricity bill is looks like the mortgage payment, right?
Well, in fact, in my riding, I have a constituent who came in to me with a $1,400 bill for his power in January.
For home?
For his home.
$1,400 a month?
Yep, that month.
Okay.
And
nobody wants to see that. But
no.
having said that, you know, how do you fight the notion that by doing all of the incentives you're doing, you're actually encouraging people to use more and not encouraging conservation?
I'll point out two things to you, Steve. One, growing income inequality in Ontario has made life a lot tougher for the bulk of people in this province. And they, for whatever reason, desperately need some relief. And I think that politically, they make a reasonable demand. Help me deal with my standard of living, my cost of living.
That's one thing. No, I hear you, but that's one thing. But you're going to take the HST off the person who's got a 10,000 square foot home in Mississauga as well.
Can I go to
How does that make
two?
sense? Point two. Sorry, go ahead.
What I find when I talk to people is they've got lots of incentive to conserve, to put in place efficiency. They don't have the capital. And in fact, that's why our platform has put in place funding, a revolving fund for people to do energy efficiency, to put solar panels on their homes, so that people who are affected by the cost, and let's face it, the cost of electricity now, the peak price, 13 cents a kilowatt hour, conservation is 3 to 6 cents. People really want to go to that lower cost. We can help them do that.
Okay, let me go to Lisa MacLeod. What does the Progressive Conservative Party have to say on these issues?
Well, sure. Let me just jump in as the soccer mom on the panel, as somebody who understands that there's parents across Ontario wanting to conserve, just like my family and I. However, when you're running out with the kids and you're trying to get your dishwasher on and your laundry on, you are thinking about trying to go after 7 o'clock and before 7 o'clock during that 12-hour time frame, but we're not seeing the reduction anymore. That's the problem. There is no incentive right now for mums and dads across this province to change their habits with their power. And I think that's a key issue. Now, the Ontario Progressive Conservatives said we'd be more systemic on how we would reduce hydro bills across the province, and how we think we can achieve a $384 reduction from what the Liberals are projecting in their 42% increase. We would change the Green Energy Act. We'd actually scrap it. That would save us about $20 billion. We've said we would look into OPG and Hydro One and make them more accountable. Look, this is two organizations within the government that the Auditor General and the OEB have complained about in terms of raising people's rates because of their incompetency. This Liberal government, they haven't done it in the last 10 years. They're not going to do it in the next 10 years. We've said we do that. And we've also said, and getting back to our earlier point, we need to work with Quebec and Manitoba and New York for cheaper power and make sure that we're not exporting $1 billion worth of our power at a heavy loss to our economy. These are things that we believe we can do in the Ontario PC Party that can systemically change our power consumption and systemically can reduce our bills. You know, if you believe in the Liberals, they haven't done it in the last 10 years. They're not going to do it in the next 10 years. We've put a plan in place in our millionjobsplan.com that we believe can help families right across the province as well as seniors and make life more affordable for them.
Let me ask Bob Shirelli about this directly then. Your government asked Don Drummond, well-known economist, to go out there and find some ways to save money. He came back and he said, your clean energy benefit is a waste of $1 billion. You should get rid of it. You guys kept it anyway. How come?
Well, Steve, first of all, I want to address the conservation issue that Ken Burns alluded to.
I hope you will get around to my clean energy benefit question eventually.
The clean energy benefit is sunsetted. It was intended to be temporary, to deal with a temporary pressure on prices for about a 5-year period, and at the end of 5 years, it automatically ends. I agree with Ken that it should be done systemically and it should not be artificially propped up. And I believe our policy in the Liberal Party is closer to Ken's, or we're closely aligned on this. Our recent long-term energy plan is called Conservation First. And if it's less expensive to do it by conservation, you do that before generation every single time. We are proposing 7 terawatts, which is a lot of power, to be conserved over the next 6 years. We've given a lot more authority to local distribution companies, to the utilities, to initiate and innovate in conservation programs, the type of things that Ken is talking about, some of the things that we've already started to do. So conservation is the best way to go, and we've heard that from stakeholders of every class as we've gone through consultations in the long-term energy plan. So I've never heard the word conservation come off Tim Hudak's lips, and Lisa just confirmed that it's not part of their policy, that they see it's too inconvenient, and they have a totally unrealistic, unbelievable assessment of conservation. Conservation is saving thousands and thousands of megawatts through all kinds of
Okay, I'm down to just a few minutes here, so I should get Lisa MacLeod to respond to that accusation, and then I want to save a couple of minutes left for one more thing. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, it's simply not true. When you're looking at a government whose off-peak hours price is almost the exact same as the on-peak price, it's very hard for young families and I'm speaking on behalf of them. Bob, I coach soccer. I get out to my daughter's dance lessons. I hear from real people who are concerned with this government's energy policy. It's all of the disincentives. And I think it's unfair for you to mischaracterize our policies as your government has been doing for the past 3 weeks. I mean, this is, again, fear-mongering by this government. I'm simply saying to you, if you want to have an incentive plan, you're going to have to ensure that it meets the needs of the population. And what they're seeing instead is they're choosing to change their habits, but they're not seeing a direct saving or any incentive.
Okay, just
whatsoever.
a few minutes.
That's a challenge.
Jumping in here with just a few minutes to go, I need brief answers from everybody on this. We all remember the days. Well, Ken, maybe not you. You're not old enough, but most of us remember the days. And Lisa, I should put you in that too. You're one of the youngest members of the legislature, or were anyway. But anyway, some of us remember the days when you could buy power from Ontario Hydro for cheap. It was cheap and abundant. And those days, it seems, are gone. Can we all agree that nobody around this table, literal and metaphorical, has a plan to reduce electricity prices? And the reality is, going forward, we're all just going to have to pay more. Peter Tabuns.
Well, a few things. A, I think you can contain prices. You don't have to have them rising at the rate that the Liberals have imposed on us. I think the reintegration of our hydro agencies so that we have economies of scale, the taking back of control of our export sales so that we make money off it rather than some Wall Street energy trader, those things will make a difference in people's lives.
Ken Burns.
I think that we have to look at our energy productivity as part of this discussion as well, and that's why we're focused on energy efficiency and conservation. Ontarians use 50% more electricity per person than our neighbors in New York State and twice as much as people in the UK. By helping people to invest in their homes in energy efficiency and conservation, we're helping people save money by saving energy, and that's the long-term solution that starts today and carries on till tomorrow.
Lisa MacLeod, if we're having an adult conversation about this, do we not have to acknowledge no one's got a plan to lower electricity prices, right?
Well, we certainly have a plan in place that can reduce them from where the Liberals are projecting them. And I think it starts with looking at those windmill investments that this government has made and saying no more to them. Secondly, I said it very clearly, we need to look into Hydro One and OPG, make them more accountable. They're part of the problem. They're driving up our increases, as is the Green Energy Act. And third and finally, those exports that we're selling off, we're actually paying people to take our power in Ontario. That's got to stop. This province used to be the economic engine of Confederation, and it was because we had cheap and affordable hydroelectric power. We've got to get back there, Steve, and we have to have that conversation. The only party willing to have it is ours.
Last word to Bob Chiarelli.
Well, again, the Conservative numbers don't add up. She blames high prices on renewable energy. That only represents 5.5% of the average person's bill moving forward. She talks about selling electricity cheap. We've generated last year $300 million revenue from sale of electricity to keep our costs down. And again, we have to have a surplus in reserve so that we have backup. I absolutely agree that the way to move forward and protect consumers is to give them every possible assistance they can for conservation and for also businesses and commercial operations to go through conservation. As I said, our long-term energy plan is conservation first. It's the cheapest form of generation. It's a generation you don't even have to generate. So moving forward, that's extremely important.
Speaking of moving forward, that's what I've got to do. I've got to move forward because I've got 3 stakeholders who still want to get on this program and say what they think about your plans. So let me thank Bob Chiarelli, who is the current Minister of Energy for the province of Ontario. He's the Liberal candidate in Ottawa West Nepean. Lisa MacLeod, the PC candidate for for Nepean Carleton. Peter Tabbins, the NDP candidate in Toronto Danforth, and Ken Burns, who's the Green Party candidate in the riding of Brant. It's good of all of you to come in and have this debate on TVO tonight. Thanks so much. And as I say to all the candidates all the time, good luck out there on the hustings.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.